Okay, so welcome everyone, and here we are today to talk about the forecast and predictions for the building industry in 2026. And the webinar today is brought to you by myself. I'm Helena from our agency, and this is my business partner, Emily.
Hello, everyone.
And we're really, really honoured and excited today to be joined by Russ Stephens from the Association of Professional Builders. Hello, Russ.
Hi, Russ. Welcome.
Hey girls, thanks so much for inviting me on. Really looking forward to this chat with you guys.
Oh, yes. Well,
Absolutely.
We are thrilled that you're here because obviously we've received the report and we've been through it in detail, and we've got some questions, and we really want to get your insights on some of the data. Before I go on, just a little bit of housekeeping for everyone. So if you have any questions, there is a Q&A feature within the webinar. So if you want to drop your questions into that question and answer area of the webinar, and we'll kind of take questions at the end. There's also captions. If you'd like to turn captions on, you can do that. And there will be a link at the end of this presentation for you to be able to download the Saucy report for yourselves.
It's really worthwhile doing. I know that a lot of the construction companies we work with, it's a family-owned business or it's a husband and wife maybe, and it can be quite isolating to not really know what the rest of the industry are perhaps doing. So really encourage you to stay to the end, download that report and have a read, because it will really help you to understand what's going on and what's going on in the industry.
So what we want you to walk away with today are a really clear understanding of how the top performing builders are positioning themselves heading into 2026. We want to look at the insights into what the data actually says about margins, demand, lead generation, things like that. We want to give you confidence about what matters and also what doesn't, so that you can use that to plan for the year ahead. And most importantly, we want to help you walk away with a mindset shift, so that you can really understand that 2026 isn't about working harder or waiting longer. It's about building a business that performs by design and systems.
And I think what's really exciting about today is we've got some, rock solid data to look at. And we've also got Russ here to kind of pick his brains on all of this. If you don't know Russ, he knows the construction industry inside out. He's talking with thousands of builders probably at this point. So we're really lucky to have him here to show us not just to look at the data, but to look at firsthand what he's seeing in the industry.
Lovely. So, Saucy, it is State of Residential Construction Industry Report. Tell us a bit about Saucy, Ross. So, how long have you been doing it? What's the size of the report? How many people partake? Things like that.
Yeah, so this is the sixth year of this annual report, and it's grown over the years. I think we've had close to 9,000 building companies having taken part in the survey now over the years. And we've got partners such as JobTread, House, Build Exact, that have all got involved as well. Builder Trend that has helped us actually collect the data. And we look across all aspects of running a residential building company. So there's a lot of questions we ask, we get a lot of insights, and we're able to go deep and see what is working for builders, what is working for the most successful building companies. So yeah, it's probably the most comprehensive survey that we know of in the industry, giving that kind of providing that kind of information.
Amazing. And what would you, and we will get into the data and on what we've sort of seen in there, but we'd love to get your insight. What do you think what is different about this year's data?
Yeah, look, the big difference with this year is the way we've been able to utilize AI to go even deeper to extract some insights. So if you can imagine, builders are filling in a survey. We're getting about 120 data points coming back. And then it's quite a manual process of analysing the data, coming up with a hypothesis of, asking a particular question and then trying to substantiate that by running the data. And really, as a human being, I'm kind of limited to 2 or 3 different data points. But with AI, we've been able to go so much deeper, and the AI has been coming up with its own hypothesis as well. So it's thinking of things that we hadn't even thought of. But to be able to go 5 or 6 data points deep and cross-reference those multiple data points, that has thrown up some fascinating insights this year, which we haven't really been able to uncover before. The other big thing is, now that we are in our 6th year, the trends are becoming clearer and clearer. So when you've been measuring certain data points year on year, you can see where there is a very clear pathway, a very clear trend in one direction or the other.
Yeah, love that. And I think it really just solidifies what builders are actually doing, and the successful builders, like what actions they're taking, what they're focusing on, what's providing value, things like that are really valuable, because everyone has a different business, but there's so many similarities between those data points that it's almost very valuable.
Yeah, it's an incredibly unique industry, and I think everyone on this call will know that this industry has a very unique set of challenges that they face. So it'll be interesting to delve further into this and get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, and you don't want to be modeling what everyone else is doing, do you? You want to be modeling what the best builders are doing, which is why this data is so valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the first things that Emily and I picked up on when we were going through the report is obviously just to kind of zoom out, the report obviously is completely industry focused. We are obviously in the sales and marketing space, so the things that we've picked out of this are more in that sort of sales and marketing area. But if you do at any point want to make any note to any reference around operations, please feel free. We picked up on, the volume of leads. So lead volumes are low. So I think in the report for last year, it was people averaging sort of that 2 to 3 leads per month. For us, from a marketing perspective, it really reinforces how volume, is low volume, means that the value needs to be really high. Like the quality of inquiry is a massive reality to people's marketing and people's day-to-day. So what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, this is a trap that a lot of builders fall into. They fall into this trap of fulfilling their demand. And it's pretty much 101 in business. It's a fundamental law. The law of supply and demand. You always want to be generating a lot more demand than you can supply, because you want to be able to say no to people. But a lot of builders fall into this trap of servicing all the demand. We often hear things, we talk about pre-construction, signing up concepts and signing up prelim agreements. How many of those do you convert? Builders will proudly say, or some builders will proudly say, all of them. And that's not where you want to be, because if you're servicing all of your demand, it makes it very difficult to increase your margins and even increase your revenue without a degree of risk. But when you get into a position where you have twice the demand that you can supply, you actually control when you scale up, and you scale up profitably as well. You're never dependent on every single prelim going to contract. You're never dependent on other people getting approved for finance or not getting divorced. I mean, that's another one. This sales process is so long, people get divorced by the time they get to sign a contract. And that obviously throws a spanner in the works as well. So, that is a big concern when you see that 2.5 leads per month. That's not enough, not enough at all. And you really want to be dialing the tap up on that. But like you say, it's got to be quality. You can't just generate a whole load of, rubbish leads looking for the gems. You want to be generating a nice level of quality leads coming in.
Absolutely, because as we see through all of our client portfolio, if people are coming to us and say, well, I'm actually got a lot of leads, but, it's a waste of time. It's actually a drain on the resource of the business if a lot of the leads you get are not quality, because you will spend time following them up, And people are busy enough. They're running around on job sites. So everyone's, what they're trying to fit into an hour is incredible. So when we talk about lead volume, we're really talking about increasing high quality leads.
There's an interesting thing on that as well. A lot of builders actually believe that a lot of their leads are rubbish or low quality or no good. But when you actually dig beneath the surface, you can see that they're not calling them instantly. So by the time they do get to speak to a lead, the lead might have already spoke to another building company, and they might say something like, yeah, I was only looking, or maybe they ghost them. And then they got this perception that lead was no good. But the reality was they lacked the process to actually get in touch with them quickly and, unearth what would have been a good lead.
Absolutely. And I think another thing that's really important to understand when we're talking about lead quality and when people are ready, and the thing that's very unique about the building industry is that lead cycle and the journey that people go through. So it's unrealistic to think that someone clicks on a Google ad, reaches out via a lead form or phone call, and then they're going to sign a contract. It very much is a journey, and someone starts to think about a project many, many months before they even start to research it. And then they research it months before they potentially are ready to talk to someone. And it's about having a presence throughout that whole journey so that when they do eventually come to make a decision, they already know, like, and trust the builder. So that's definitely something that we're always trying to educate. And beyond that, they may come through as a lead, they've given you their contact details. It may be that they need nurturing for months beyond that too. And that's where...
This is a really important point, and it's why it's so important that builders engage an agency that understand the residential construction industry, because like you say, the sales cycle is very, very long. It's quite unique in that respect. But when it comes to marketing and advertising, there's two fundamentally different approaches. You've got your e-commerce. They're going for the sale. It's low value. They're going for the sale. But like you say, this is a very different model. We're not going for the sale. We're going for the lead, but then we've got to nurture the lead, and it takes a very different marketing approach. And a lot of agencies have never worked with residential building companies, simply don't understand that. And this is where builders get burnt. They engage an agency, they'll throw a load of money at it, and it's 2-3 months before they realize they're just not getting anything out of it. So, we always say you've got to work with an agency that has worked in this industry before and understands the process.
Yeah, I love that. And I think touching on what you said about e-commerce, like, one thing that I'm always trying to explain to people when I'm talking to them about this is things like e-commerce marketing. It's really quick touch points. So with regards to the data that's being gathered on the back end, so when you talk about marketing, it's all about gathering the data and learning, and then that provides you a higher quality lead and things like that. With e-commerce, that, people are purchasing like 4, 5, even 10, 20 times a day. The data builds up really quickly in the building industry because the volume is lower. The data just takes longer. So that when people say, oh, like, when will it work? It's like, yes, it's going to take longer to get to that point because the algorithm needs time to learn about what's a good client for you. But if you understand the process and how it all works, like, it's a really valuable tool.
Absolutely.
If you don't have a sales process in place, you're going to come to the belief that the marketing isn't working when that might not be the case. It could just be that your sales process isn't well thought out.
All right. Well, shall we move on to point 2? All righty. Let me just share my screen again. This is one of my favorites. Marketing spend correlates with margins. So in the data, we saw very clearly that anyone that's sort of spending nothing on marketing, basically, we're getting the lowest margins. And builders that were spending sort of 2 to 4% on marketing saw the highest margins. And I just want to reiterate here, when we say 2 to 4%, that's all marketing costs. So not just your digital marketing, but the cost of running your website, having your site signage, your car signage, any marketing expense. But yes.
And I think that's probably one of the biggest education pieces when we talk to builders, is that they're seeing their marketing costs. And I think to see, as high as 5%, people sort of go, wow, that's a lot of money to be spending on marketing. But if you are looking to get your name out there, then absolutely that's realistic. And also, it's not to be looked at as an expense, it's to be looked at as an investment. If you do want a sustainable long-term business, if you do want to grow your business, then it is a necessary investment, not a short-term expense.
This is very, very interesting. As you were saying that, it kind of got me thinking. The builders that are like your average builders, the guys that are not as successful, they will think in terms of cost. So you'll be talking 3% was always the sweet spot. It was always 3% marketing and advertising. That was the magic number. And the builders that look at that and think that's a lot of money, they're thinking in terms of cost. The most successful, the wealthiest builders think in terms of value. They don't look at $10 million a year in revenue and think 3%, that's $300,000. That's a lot of money. They don't think like that. They think, what will I get back for that? They look at it in a very different way. And what you get back is all that money that you invested, all that 3% and some. Because this is what we're talking about when we're talking about the highest margins. We're not just saying they get bigger margins. Their margins are big enough to not only have a higher gross, but a higher net. So that means they are covering that 3% that they're investing in marketing and advertising and still having left over. And why? It's because they've created more demand than they can supply, which has allowed them to increase their margins and increase their revenue. What was interesting this year is always been 3%. This year was the first year that we saw in the data, because we don't just ask how much they're investing. We look at all the other data, their revenue, their profitability, their fixed expenses. And this was the first year we actually saw that number moved from 3 to 4%. So the builders that were investing 4% in marketing and advertising actually had not only the highest gross margins, they had the highest net margins as well. So yeah, and I think this correlates with what we're seeing. We're seeing a more demanding client base, which means we have to spend more time and energy educating them and money. So that is all tying into the marketing as well. But yeah, the key is when you start investing this kind of money into marketing and advertising, you've got to get your margins right before you chase the volume.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another thing that's also really worth a mention when it comes to marketing investment is the intangible benefits also of your brand equity and things like that, because it often goes unnoticed. But when you see a builder that's marketed very effectively for years and they've implemented like a system which is consistently generating more demand than what they can supply, not only does that obviously give them a very good business model and structure going forward, but if they ever want to come to exit that business, it's going to sell for a lot more multiples because it has a system in place that's generating, inquiry, but also has a brand equity associated with that as well.
It's trust, isn't it? Because reviews are important. Google reviews, Facebook reviews, client testimonials, all important. But every time you're posting and when you're doing it on a frequent, regular basis, that builds trust so that when they're ready to move forward, that trust converts into dollars. So yeah, this is why we see builders that do invest in marketing being so successful. Content marketing really is the secret sauce, as far as I'm concerned, for builders, from what I've seen over the years in terms of margins.
Definitely. And I think the other sort of pushback we get when we talk to a lot of people about this is that but I've grown to where I am on referrals, and that kind of brings us to the next thing that we uncovered when we were looking at the report, was that referral dependency is a margin limiter. And I think it's sort of a universal business rule that what got you to phase one is not going to get you to the next goal. So a lot of great builders that we've worked with have grown to where they are on the back of doing good work and getting work referred, and that's fantastic. It means you're doing a good job. You're building relationships, but that's only going to take you so far.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. What got you here is not going to get you there, and I think referrals is a cracking example of that. It's always sad when we talk to builders about their business and ask them what they're doing in terms of marketing, and some of them will say, yeah, referrals. Yeah, I don't. How much do you spend on advertising? Nothing. I don't need to. All my work comes through word of mouth. Yeah, we're that good. And they're not realizing that, they are on way lower margins because, they don't have more demand than they can supply, which people that invest in marketing and advertising do.
The thing about word of mouth referrals, that's not a dial that you can kind of crank up and down.
You're relying on someone else, aren't you? To basically exactly. The success of your business is reliant on that referrer, whether that's ex-clients or whether it's an architect or whatever. It's out of your hands. That's not where you want to be in business.
Yeah, it's a vulnerable position to be in for sure.
That should be the cream.
Exactly. It's the cream because you can actually get extra margin. When you're busy and you're in demand and you've got a backlog and then someone gets referred, there's an extra bit of margin, because they will pay a premium to build with you. Their friends have highly recommended you. Yeah.
Absolutely. Amazing. All right. Well, that kind of takes us nicely into looking at some of the forecasts and predictions that we've kind of come up with you, and we'll talk about those a little bit more. So I'll share my screen. And first one, demand creation will separate survivors from leaders. So this is kind of around builders who generate demand. We see that they're going to stabilize, and builders who wait for referrals will feel the volatility first. Coming into this 2026 market, where we've already discussed the consumer expectation is higher and the demand isn't going away, but it's like people are just expecting more. It's like getting harder to get people's attention. There's more competition. So this is really, I feel like, what's going to separate, the ones that kind of really
and I
take
feel like
to the next level.
When we talk about the top 20% of builders, this is kind of the overarching thing that we see. And I suppose that's probably what you see as well, Russ.
Yeah, we spoke about this in our opening address at Summit last year, funny enough, and it was that increase in consumer expectations. And the builders that were going to survive in the next few years were the ones that could meet those expectations. And it's something we've just noticed increasing significantly since COVID. Expectations are up. And there's scientific ways to measure this, and it has been proven that clients just expect more and more from the builders. So, as a builder, you've got to be systemized to be able to deliver on those expectations. And without systems, you're just not going to be able to deliver enough to meet what people are looking for these days. No one wants a standard cookie cutter home anymore. Even the homes that are sold as existing plans, they're always being modified. Everyone wants that personalization these days, and you've got to be able to adapt to that. So it's in that respect, I wouldn't say it's getting harder, but it's becoming more complex with moving parts. But equally, we've now got access to the systems that make that easier. So if it feels like it's getting harder, maybe you're just not implementing the tools that are available to you as a builder.
Yeah, and there's absolutely so many amazing tools now. And one that kind of comes to mind when we're talking about the importance of professionalism and consumer expectations is, of course, a CRM, and even just having automated responses in place. It is a very personalized sales process in the building industry. So we would never say try and automate all of it, but there are elements to that you can automate, and it can really kind of help with how you present more professionally, to have an integrated calendar and appointment setting and instant responses to things.
And I think traditionally, if we look back maybe even 10 years ago, there is almost this grace that was given to construction companies because they weren't expected to be as professional or as polished maybe as other businesses, but they are now. People are expecting the communications and the processes to be professional and polished, as well as, a fantastic home or renovation done at the end of the day. And I think the, skill set and the passion for being a builder and, building something incredible and that you're proud of, and the skill set and the passion behind building a business, a construction business that works and is profitable and efficient, they're quite different. And I think that's sometimes what people struggle with.
Yeah, CRM is still a fantastic opportunity for builders because there's so few builders that, number one, have a CRM, but there's so few that actually use a CRM, even if they've got one. It's less than 20% of builders email their databases twice or more per month, which is just shocking, because when you do email them, they're going to unsubscribe because they've forgotten who you are. And then you got the false belief that, people don't want to receive emails. But, when you're frequent and you build that relationship up through email, then it's an incredibly valuable tool. Something like 60% of builders never email their databases. It's a massive opportunity. It's kind of one of the fundamentals that you need to have in place in business, and it's all part of how you educate your market and utilize information that you're creating for your blog posts, for your videos, etc. You've got to get that out there. We have to pay Facebook and Google to promote content, but you want to utilize a channel that you're in control of, which is email.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it comes back to that journey. People are busier than ever now. I know personally, like the habits that people take online are changing. And if I think I need to deal with that at some point, I'll submit an inquiry because I expect them to come back to me at some point and chase me up. And it's really important to understand that, just because someone doesn't answer straight away, things change and people's lives are busy. And so just being in front of, you've got their details now, just being in front of them consistently for a period of time, when they do come into that point where they're ready to engage again, they're going to be, thinking of you first because they've heard from you through that period where.
Absolutely. Especially if they've maybe reached out to 3, 4, 5 people to get quotes to kind of get their details in there. If you're the one that comes back to them quickly and professionally and consistently, you're going to be head and shoulders above the rest.
Yeah, this has been measured. It comes down to seconds. And if you can't do it in seconds, then you've got to be doing it in minutes. But yeah, I've spoken to people in the past that I don't like to go back too quickly because I don't want to seem desperate. You're actually having the complete reverse effect. You're letting golden opportunities slip through your fingers. And another point, I guess, that's important is we live in a world now where it's an omni-channel approach. You can't just rely on one channel anymore. A lot of people don't answer the phone anymore. It's not like back in the day. So, you've got to be utilizing the phone. You've got to be utilizing SMS and email. You've got to be doing those 3 as an absolute minimum.
Yeah. And understanding your demographic as well, because we do find a lot of our builders are in that range where they want to attract a high disposable income ideal client, and sometimes they're sitting in the vicinity of 40-year-olds to 50-year-olds to 60-year-olds, and there's a difference between how they're going to interact with you online as well. So understanding your ideal client and how they're going to interact with you online can help you really determine the best kind of methodology behind, how to continue communications with them too.
Yeah, you respond in the channel that they respond to you in. So you're going to go out initially across the board, but whichever channel they respond on, that's the channel you keep the conversation going. Don't try and move them off that.
Love that. Let's move on to the prediction number 2, which is margin pressure, margin pressure will expose weak positioning. And what we have sort of identified in this space is that we really want to help builders understand that their positioning online is, and kind of growing that brand authority and brand trust is really what's going to make the difference between price checking or not. So a lot of what we see when people do market online, especially on platforms like Meta, is this kind of low quality lead. And it's purely because how they're kind of going to market and what they're saying is not distinguishing them as anything unique. It's like they're a generic builder. And so they're going to attract generic inquiry of people just looking to price check. And so it's really that positioning that's going to help, I believe, with margins.
Yeah, competing on price, that is a slow and painful death for a building company. It takes years to pay out, and it is painful. I think the most important thing for not just builders but anyone in business to remember is that margins are linked to marketing. So if you find yourself in a position where you can't charge the prices that or the margins that you need to charge, or you can't get near the margins that APB tell you that you should be putting on your jobs, and you maybe have the belief that it's all about price in your area, and it's like, yeah, that's fine, but in my area they won't pay that. They won't pay for quotes. They won't pay those prices. I'd lose jobs to every other builder. If you find yourself in that situation, it is not your pricing. It's your failure, or the failure of your marketing and your sales process to demonstrate value. Pure and simple. That's what you need to fix. When you fix that, you will be amazed how easy it is to charge higher margins and build a profitable professional building company.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's also worth pointing out here as well. I can imagine that because we have a lot of builders on this webinar today, and there'd be a lot of companies in different stages of that timeline. And one thing I always try and reiterate is it's definitely something you need to do, but you don't have to do everything straight away. And creating the demand first is probably the most important thing. And then you can start to look at other ways to, refine how you are offering those like quotes and things like that too.
Yeah, look, the first thing I'd say is put your prices up. You won't be able to put them up to the levels we're talking about, but what we do find, you can put them up 2 or 3%. Builders are always amazed how easy that was. Put them up 2-3%, contracts still get signed. But to get the top margins that are going to deliver a 10% net profit, like you say, it takes time. You've got to have the other components in place. It's not very leveraged to start with because it all comes from education. Builders are doing this probably without realizing, just when they're talking to consumers, they're actually educating them, sharing their expertise. You want to put that on steroids and put it in your marketing so you're not having those same conversations over and over again.
So true. I love the education piece. And we do hear a lot of feedback around the market being surprised at the cost of things. I think is naturally, obviously things have increased in price a lot over the last 5 years, but educate the market about that, because most of the time, if they want to work with you, they trust you, they're happy with that anyway. So it's really, again, comes back to, like you say, educating in the marketing is so valuable.
And consumers, believe it or not, do not go with the lowest price. Investors do because it's dollars and cents. Consumers actually go where they see value. The reason they tell you they went with the lowest price is to get rid of you, because they chose another builder. And the easiest way to get rid of the builders that have quoted for them is to say, I went with someone cheaper. Because what can you do? There's no comeback from that. But if they said, no, I just trusted this other guy a bit more than you, you're gonna arc up and you're gonna have an uncomfortable conversation. So they just tell you its price, and then you're left with this belief that you need to trim your margin on the next job.
That's so true. And I think especially if we're talking about Custom home builds, 1 mil plus. It's it's a discerning kind of buyer, and it's a higher income bracket, and they're definitely looking for value for money, but they're also looking for someone that's going to not be a headache, that they can trust that this is going to go smoothly, that their time is not going to be wasted.
That's right. You're not selling a commodity at that level, are you? And people that are building at that level, they understand the value of their time. They don't want to be managing the project for you on site.
No,
Exactly.
definitely. They don't have time for that. Okay, so prediction number 3 is, and we kind of touched on this already, but yeah, builders needing fewer leads but better ones. So it's really going to be about that quality. Yes, like we need volume in the demand, but it needs to be quality volume, so not wasting time. And one thing I wanted to touch on in this space was around the systems and the pre-qualification that you can have in place to ensure that when you do engage in a conversation with someone, you already have certain information from them, not just their contact details, but additional information like what type of project, or what's their range, or where the site is, or just a little bit more information that kind of proves a bit more legitimacy of that lead.
And I think things like site location, that's a really key thing. Obviously, builders have service areas. You want to be able to push out very, very quickly before you've wasted time anyone who is definitely you can't help. And then, like Helen is saying, we want as much high quality lead as we can get.
Yeah, the whole qualifying process, it's there's 2 distinct stages to it. You've got your disqualifying process, 7 closed questions. The wrong answer to one of those questions, that's it. They're gone. You're not going to waste any more time. And you can do that in 5 minutes. This is how you protect your time. Like you say, if someone's not building in your area, or if they don't have land, there's a number of questions. Maybe they're not in your niche. You're doing high-end custom homes. They're doing a renovation, or an investment home. You don't want those. You want to focus on your niche, because that's how you can optimize your whole operations, and that's how you can become more profitable. So you've got to have those disqualifiers, and then only after that do you go into the open questions where you go deep. You're looking for the emotion. You're recording all this information in your CRM, but you're still, to a certain degree, you're still qualifying. But really important to have feedback loops in place as well. Especially if you're using a marketing agency, because you want to be able to feed back to them the leads that are coming in. I was just talking to a friend of mine last week. He runs an events company, and they were doing well, and they were getting plenty of leads in, and consistent sales. But as he was scaling up, he needed to outsource to an agency, and he outsourced to this agency. And he told me initially, like, it's going well, like tons of leads coming in. But then he called me up a few weeks ago, and he said, we're just not getting the sales. And the salespeople weren't able to close. He jumped on the calls, and he wasn't even able to close. So he figured there's something different in the leads. And when he dug into it, he realized they'd changed the whole funnel. So whereas he had this marketing funnel where it would educate, they would opt in, they knew what they were opting in for, and then after they opted in, it would continue to educate. What this new agency had set up was very blind, and it was all about grabbing the lead. And you know what happened after they submitted their details on the lead? Came up with a page that said thank you, and that was it. There was no video, there was no next step, there was nothing. And so they were calling the leads, and half the time these people didn't even know who they were. It was terrible. But on the surface it looked great because they were getting so many leads, but the quality just wasn't there as well. So fortunately he was all across it, and he got to the problem reasonably quickly and was able to fix it, and literally overnight the quality went up. So this is where these feedback loops are so important. You've got to work with your agency. You can't just hand over to an agency and basically then expect to get sales, or even leads. But if the leads come in, you've got to be giving that feedback, as to if they're working, if they're the right quality or not, and then the agency can adapt and refine what they're doing.
And that's exactly right. And I think that when we work with builders and they're really focused on, they know what their sales conversion rates are, they know what looks good and what's standard for them, then we can really work with people to set KPIs and kind of, make sure that the marketing and sales things are joining up. But you're absolutely right. And what you've just talked about is a great example of the disparity between, if agencies are trying to go, oh, well, they want to have the most impressive lead volume they can.
The cost per lead.
Yes, because that's a good metric for them to be able to maybe talk to you about in a monthly report. But what really matters to you is the quality of those leads. How many progress to a call? How many progress to a prelim agreement or a contract signed? So all of that stuff. And like we were talking about at the beginning, it's a unique industry. Make sure that whoever you're working with understands that and that you're still holding the reins on that.
Yeah, one of the key things that we found over the years, because we measure different steps of the funnel for builders. So first of all, you've got a lead, then you've got a marketing qualified lead. So that means it's not an SEO company just filling in your contact us form. It is a consumer that is wanting to speak to a builder. So that would be a marketing qualified lead. But then a sales qualified lead is someone that you've then spoken to. You've gone through your disqualification questions, so you know they're in the right area, and you know that they are going to build with someone. And at this point, you play your cards right. That builder's going to be you. But when you get to that sales qualified lead, or SQL as we call it, what we found is these leads all convert at the same ratio, regardless of which channel they came in. So it doesn't matter if they were a referral or a paid lead from Facebook or an organic search opportunity. At the MQL stage, they do convert differently. As you know, Facebook leads are, a lot colder. They're maybe reaching out to a lot more builders, so conversion rates are lower. But once you qualify and get to that next stage, they all convert the same. So that is a key one to measure cost per sales qualified lead. When you understand what your cost per sales qualified lead is, as well as cost per marketing qualified lead, then you're in a very, very strong position to scale up your building company.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the final prediction, and this is one of my favorites, is the gap between strategic and reactive builders will widen. And we've all heard about the feast and famine mentality, and a builder does a bit of marketing or gets busy in operations, completing projects, forgets about marketing and what's happening after this project's finished, and then gets to that point and they then become reactive to, I've got to do some more marketing. And really, whereas a strategic builder it's always there running in the background, and they're looking to build a pipeline, and
they're looking 6 months, 12 months ahead at all times. Because like we were talking about at the beginning, this is not something where you flick some ads on and you sell some handbags overnight. It's possibly the biggest, for most people, the biggest purchase decision they're ever going to make, even if it's one they make once, twice, 3 times in their life max. So it's something that if you are wanting to build a pipeline of good work, it takes time. It's not something you flick on and off, and it's not something that you can start on a Monday and then by Friday you're good to go.
Yeah, look, the best building companies, the most profitable, most successful building companies, they never turn their advertising off. And we had a great example of this during the COVID boom when builders had consumers queue it up to sign contracts. You didn't need to be good at sales to sign contracts. You didn't even need to be good at marketing. You didn't even need to market. In a lot of instances, people were just finding builders and wanting to build. And one of our most successful builders at the time, he called me up because because we were providing this service at the time where we were creating content. He wanted to create another year's worth of content. He'd been doing this for 3 years already. But in the middle of the COVID boom, he'd already told me that they had more inquiries than they could cope with. He said, I'm saying no to more people every day than I've ever said before. But here he was talking about investing another $60,000 just in the creation of content, let alone the advertising, just the creation. And the reason he wanted to do that was because he was already looking ahead 15 months time. He said, my funnel is full. We're turning people away. We're booked out for 12 months. I want to be booked out for another 18 months to 2 years. That's what he was looking at. And he was absolutely right, because this creating the marketing and the advertising, the sales cycle is so long for builders. You've got to be doing it through the boom times to ensure that you don't get those dips. And time again, this is what we see the most successful builders doing. They're always generating more and more demand, even when it might seem like it's a waste of money. You don't need it. You've got all these leads pouring in. Why would you spend more money? But this is why they do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So true. So I'm just looking at time. We are flying by an hour that we have. So I'll just keep things going, even though I've got so much more to talk about on that one. We just want to kind of summarize a couple of points here. So just to kind of conclude or bring it all together. So hope is not the strategy, especially in sort of low volume, high stakes industries like residential construction. So what the Sourcey data is showing us is that builders who rely heavily on referrals and word of mouth experience lower margins and they have less control. And so if you're waiting for the market to improve, it puts you in that reactive position. So where you've become price defensive, you kind of have to erode on the margins, decision making becomes short term. And then by the time this sort of improvement's visibility, the builders that have invested early in their positioning have already kind of moved ahead. If you have any comments on that one.
Yeah, I mean, like we said earlier, you never want to be relying on anyone else for the success of your building company. You don't want to rely on people for referrals. You certainly don't want to be relying on the government to create a strong economy, because we know how that goes on a regular basis. So you've got to keep things completely within your control. And it is possible to have it in your control, regardless of what is happening in the macro economy. And, regardless as to, whether other people are referring leads to you or not. Just hoping things will get better, looking at the move and the news and kind of saying, oh, yeah, well, that's why we're quiet. The whole market's down. Doesn't matter. There's, we can
tell you that it's not for a lot of builders. But yeah,
it's that story, isn't it? The two men walking through the jungle, and they come across a tiger, and one of them sits down, opens his backpack, pulls out some running shoes. He said, "What are you doing that for?" He said, "You're never going to outrun a tiger." He said, "I don't have to. I only need to outrun you." And that's what it's like in business. We've only got to be better than the other builders, and there is plenty of work there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of leads into the data sort of suggesting that 2026 is not going to be like a bounce back year. It really is going to be transitional. And so, as we were just saying, like the demand isn't going to disappear, but it is fragmenting. We are seeing that clients are taking longer to decide. Financial conditions are tight with interest rates and things like that. And, there are delays in builds, but, they're not being cancelled. So it's like the competition is increasing. And the buyers are becoming a little bit more cautious. So that's why it's really important to kind of stay ahead of demand and, keep that predictability in the inquiry coming through.
Yeah, it's always about evolution rather than revolution in business. It's, not as exciting, but you just keep getting better. Every year, every month, every week, just doing things a bit better, and that compound effect will see you through. But you've got to be educating yourself as well. You've got to know, because a lot of people, they just don't know what they don't know. So you've got to go out of your way to expose yourself to what it is that you don't know, because that's what's going to bite you. So you've got to know your true cost per opportunity. And that's because business is a numbers game. marketing and advertising. It's purely a numbers game. So, you've got to understand your conversion rates, your cost of acquisition, to understand where your business is and if it's scalable. And you want to be controlling that demand, like we spoke about as well. You don't want to depend on it and depend on other people. You want to control it. You want to be in control of the tap. You want to be able to turn that tap up and down, rather than sitting at the end of the pipe, looking up there, seeing when the water's coming out. It's be at the other end in control, and build those systems, because systems are at the heart of every good business.
Definitely. And I think we see it a lot. One thing I say a lot, the secret ingredient to marketing isn't anything crazy. You see all these people online saying, I found the magic sauce and I found the secret ingredient. It really is just being really consistent and giving it time. And they're the two magic ingredients that you can't just throw money at. It's like, actually, you
can't speed it up.
Can't speed it up. Like it's just like having like a really consistent approach, having a plan, and just giving it the time that it needs. And it definitely works. And like you said about the systemization, like the clients that we've been working with over, numerous years, it really is just a maths equation at that point. They know that they put this much money in, they get this out, they have this many meetings, they get this many contracts. Like, it's so boring, but like,
it becomes a maths formula.
It's so good. Yeah. And that's what you need. Like, and then you can make decisions on your business based on that.
Strategy eats tactics for breakfast. So whenever you hear about these new marketing techniques, these great new strategies, they're tactics. And they won't last. I mean, while they're working, great, but strategy, that's what you want to be focused on. Get that right, and you'll have a business that will run forever.
Yeah, absolutely. And to kind of summarize just some key points, just to kind of bring it all together, like you've already said, like just knowing your true cost per opportunity is really important, and definitely something, if you're going to take anything away today, to start to really try and understand what that cost is. Starting to control demand instead of depend on it. Builders need to become more systemized and streamlined to sort of handle that growth, and also just like increased professionalism, so that consumer expectations have changed. So really just adapting and evolving to remain competitive in that space as well.
And I think that nearly brings us to a bit of Q&A. Oh, we'll do the download of Saucy, obviously. So we've touched on a few of the points that we think are really interesting, but I would really encourage anyone in the industry to just grab your phones and scan this QR code, and it'll take you to where you need to be to download the Saucy report. It's really interesting. It's great to see what other people are doing, and particularly what the successful guys are doing, because we want to make sure that obviously we're replicating those actions. So we'll just leave that up there for a second.
Yeah, we'll email out the link at the end as well to everyone, in case anyone didn't get that. And Q&A. So I'll
let Helena check our little inbox to see what questions we've got. And in the meantime, Russ, I'd love to ask you, obviously we've talked a lot there about things that are changing, that have changed. What do you think are some of the core challenges of the industry or realities of the industry that haven't changed, that are still, that you see year in, year out?
Yeah, sadly, the one thing that we have seen come through year in, year out is the understanding of financials. This industry is very unique. It's very misunderstood. Something like 90% of accountants don't truly understand the financials in this industry, not because they're not good at their jobs, but because the terminology we use in construction makes it confusing, and it gets confused for different meanings. As a result, non-construction specific accountants produce incorrect financial reports for builders, which does result in builders not realizing how much trouble they're in until it's too late. And this is why we see so many building companies going under for huge sums of money. And you think they couldn't have lost all that money in a year. Yet when you look at the liquidator's report by a forensic accountant, that's exactly what they expect us to believe. 12 months ago, everything was fine. Then all of a sudden they lost $5 million. And you think they're only doing $3 million a year. How did that happen? But these are the kind of things they expect us to believe. But it all comes down to the fact that they're not understanding how construction financials work. And we are seeing small improvements year on year, but still not enough. Still something crazy, like over 80% of builders are looking at incorrect financial information every month. And like we've been talking about, unless you are all across your numbers, you're flying blind. And imagine flying blind in an aircraft and you come up to a mountain. That's what's going to happen to your building company, unfortunately. So it's, you've got to get across this stuff.
Amazing. Okay, so here's a good one. What platforms should I be using to generate demand? It's probably a good one for you, Emily.
That is probably a good one for me. So I think there's no one size fits all for things. And this is probably the difference between the agencies who maybe specialize in working with builders. But everything you do in the marketing and advertising space, there should be strategy behind that. Like we were saying about tactics sort of come and go and hot new platforms come and go. It's really, really important to be strategic with what you're doing. I think at the start, you've got to look at how much you have to spend. So if you have a pretty modest budget, maybe at the start of your business journey, or you're just starting to invest in marketing and advertising, then you don't want to spread yourself too thin. So if you're only focusing across, one or two core platforms, you've got to be asking yourself really, where are my ideal target audience? So for example, if I'm a custom home builder in Melbourne and I'm really trying to talk to the upper echelons, I'm probably not going to do TikTok advertising. It's probably a certain age group that I'm looking at. And that's all the work that you're going to do in the strategy side of things, to figure out who are these people and where are they spending their time and where do I want to be showing up in all parts of this customer journey. So when they're doing their research, is my website showing up? Do I need to be doing good SEO, and SEO that's going to help me show up on platforms like ChatGPT as well as platforms like Google? These are maybe more tech savvy consumers. Or is it the wife and she's looking at beautiful, photos on Pinterest or Instagram? You've got to kind of be quite strategic about that and make sure that you're not just thinking about the end goal where they go to your website and they fill out a form. There's a whole research process and consideration process here that you want to make sure you're touching base on. So there's no, unfortunately, one size fits all answer to that, but ask yourself, how much do I have to spend? If it's, if it's not too much, you want to consolidate to one or two platforms, and you want to make sure that those are the platforms that are going to be hitting your ideal customer as they move through that journey.
That was a beautiful answer.
It's what I do for a living. And I don't think we have too much time left, but Russ, is there any sort of closing thoughts you had, or anything, any more words of wisdom for us?
Look, as we're talking about marketing and advertising, I guess the one thing that I would say is that advertising does work. If you've advertised in the past that it hasn't worked for you, it doesn't mean advertising doesn't work. It just means you haven't found the right agency or used the right process. But this is the key to business. This is why so many companies spend so much money on advertising every single year.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you to everyone that was here. We will send out a copy of this webinar as a recording in the next couple of days. We'll also send through the link for the Saucy download so everyone can have a download and a read of that one. And thanks, Ross, for being here today. It was great to hear from you. And we've loved talking to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Ross.
Thank you so much. Yeah, really enjoyed it. It's been a good chat.
Awesome. And thank you to everyone for joining. We'll let you get on with your busy days and hopefully speak to some people soon.
See you guys.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Russ.